Okay, good afternoon. My name is Daniel Marquez. I'm a student here at Odessa College in the Occupational Safety and Health Technology program with Ms. Marilyn Jones. My professor for this class, which is Safety Program Presentation, is Mr. Parks. Today I'm going to be giving you guys a presentation over confined space, more or less permit required confined space. Now, this regulation is so big, and the amount of time I can only give you a general awareness of this regulation because it's so big. There's so much information. So today I'm going to try and condense it down in just a few minutes to give you the general idea, a general knowledge of what the regulation consists of. So first and foremost is danger. A lot of confined spaces have this sign. It's got a red, black, and white sign that says danger, confined space, enter by permit only. Hence for permit required confined spaces. Now, the regulation of OSHA 29 CFR 1910.146, which is permit required confined spaces, and OSHA says, or OSHA regulations ensure that employees can safely enter into and work within the permit required confined spaces. But there's some regulations and rules that are needed before an employee goes into a permit required confined space. Now, what is a permit required confined space? First and foremost, it contains or has the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere, meaning it's dangerous, it's bad for your health. Contains a material that has the potential of engulfing an entrant, meaning you could suffocate or some substance inside could collapse and engulf you, you could suffocate. The internal configuration might cause the entrant to be trapped or asphyxiated by inwardly converging walls, meaning the walls slope down into like a cone or a funnel. And it is not designed for continuous human occupancy, meaning you can't live inside this building or this place. Now, before going into a permit required confined space, there are safe entry procedures. You must ventilate and eliminate and control the space, remove the hazards, because you want to make sure it's safe for you to go in there before you do any work. Now, if there's lines, electrical lines, plumbing, you need to blind or disconnect those lines. You need to do lockout, tag out, and so that way there's no hazardous material in the space. Now, duties. There's 3 separate duties required whenever you're doing a permit required confined space. The first one is the entrant. The entrant understands the potential hazards. He knows how to use equipment properly. He communicates with the attendant regularly. And if the unexpected occurs, he alerts the attendant and he exits immediately before a hazard happens. For example, the attendant is inside a permit required confined space and he figures out or he smells something funny, something's out of whack, out of the ordinary. He feels like it's something unexpected, which could be a danger, which you don't know what's in there, and his life is in danger, then he can immediately exit without telling anybody, without any repercussions. Next is the attendant. The attendant is stationed outside the permit required confined space. Now the attendant, he monitors the entrant, knows the hazards that are inside, the signs, symptoms, and consequences while he's watching the entrant inside the required space. He remains outside the permit space during entry, and he cannot leave until he is relieved by another person or another attendant with equal or greater training. Meaning, he has to stay put watching the entrant inside the space, and he cannot leave for any reason whatsoever unless someone comes to relieve him. Next, we also have the entry supervisor. Now, this person is responsible for determining the acceptable entry conditions are present. Meaning he has to make sure that the space is ventilated, there's no hazards in there, all the proper lines are disconnected by blinding, capping, or relieving pressure, proper lockout, tagout procedures. Now, he's responsible for determining acceptable entry conditions, and he is the one that's authorized the entry, overseeing entry operations, and for terminating entry as required. Meaning he can put a stop to the job at any time that he feels necessary. There's a hazard or there's a possibility of a potential hazard. Now, safe entry procedures, we're going to keep on touching base on this topic. Authorized entrants can enter a space only after it's been tested and found that it is safe for entry. Meaning, the person that's going to be inside, you're going to be inside doing work. You want to make sure it's safe for you to go in there, right? Now, the entrant must know what equipment and how to use it. If you're going in there to do a job, you should know what tools you're going to take, how to use them, how to bring them back out. What else you're going to need in there. And now, at least one attendant must remain outside the permit space during the duration of the entry. Okay. Conclusion. Before any confined space work is done, an employer must establish a confined space written program. Meaning, a confined space needs a permit. Needs to have an entry supervisor, an attendant, the attendant, the entry, and the supervisor. Everyone has their set list of duties. Now, remember, a confined space is a space that meets all three of the following criteria. Is large enough to enter and to perform work, has limited means of entry and exit, is not designed for continuous human occupancy, meaning you can't live in the space. You can't go in there and watch TV. The permanent space program is an overall program for controlling and protecting employees from permanent space hazards, meaning you don't know what's in there. And the program, the written program, is a set of SOPs, which are special operating procedures, written for cases like this. Now, duties are assigned to employees as the attendant, the entrant, or the entry supervisor, with each having its own specific tasks and duties. Now, rescuers account for over 60% of confined space fatalities. What does that mean? Why is that number so high? For a reason like this. You see your buddy go into a confined space, your buddy passes out. What's the first instinct, the first human natural reaction is to go in there and try to help your friend out. But you don't know why did he fall unconscious. Did he just have suffered from heat stroke? Is there a hazardous environment? Was there gas? Did he hit his head on something? You don't know. You don't want to be the second victim in there. And for example, like this is set up so you can see a rescue team, and how also the rescue team sets up the tripod for a vertical lift. And with this, I conclude to you guys that a permit required confined space, it must have a permit in place with all the special operating procedures. It must have an entry supervisor, an attendant, and an entry, the person that's going to go inside. And remember the three criteria that a space must meet. It must be big enough to go in there and perform work. It's not designed for continuous human occupancy, and it has a possibility or danger to contain a hazard. Now, after this test, or after this presentation, we're going to do a small test. Do you guys have any questions?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you explain to me again the duties of the attendant?
The attendant is a person that's listed on the permit. For example, the attendant is a person that's actually going inside the confined space to perform any assigned work. Whatever the case may be, he's going to go in there to clean up sludge, oil, or to disconnect the line. The attendant or the entry, he's going inside the space. Okay? Any other questions?
Why do you need a permit?
Why do you need a permit? Because OSHA regulations have said that a lot of accidents, for example, like this, have happened because there's no permit in place, there's no special operating procedures, meaning anybody can just go in without space, not knowing the hazards or the dangers that could be in there. So now, a lot of companies are, how can I say, they're going from a non-permit required space to a permit required space, meaning there's more rules, there's more regulations to follow, it's more protection for the employee, the entrant, because he's the one that's going in there to do the job. That's the reason why we have so many rules and regulations in the confined space program. But like I said, this is just a general awareness. There's so much information. This topic is so big. There's not enough time really in this video, this presentation, so I can teach you guys how to be perfect at this regulation. But any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.